for what he's had, he's definitely made an impact. And it's definitely challenging because, anytime you lose your starting quarterback, a Pro Bowl or All-Pro player, it's the most challenging part. But for what he's done, putting 20 points on the board, so we got to be better, you got to play better defense. That's where I take accountability at. I appreciate Mike and for everything he's done for me and the program. If this was our last ride, because he's always been a great man, a great father, a great testament of faith since he's been here. So I appreciate him.
Let's bring in our senior NFL insider, Adam Schefter. Adam, I remember this time last year, the Cowboys announced they were keeping Mike McCarthy. Everybody surprised. No movement yet, or no decision yet. What more can you tell us about McCarthy and his future?
Well, that's not surprising right now, Matt. And it took some time last year before they came to the conclusion to ultimately keep Mike McCarthy and have him enter the last year of his contract that now is expiring. And I think there are some various thoughts about this across the league. A lot of people believe that Jerry Jones wants Mike McCarthy back, and they'll work to see if they can figure out a solution. I think there are people that have other ideas that would like to see if the Cowboys should explore other head coaching options. It's one of the central head coaching questions that continues looming out there, whether or not Dallas keeps Mike McCarthy. I think the feeling across the league is that he's more likely to be back than not, but it is far from a certainty, and this whole issue still is yet to be decided. Jerry Jones has to figure it out with Mike McCarthy, whose contract is up. He could also look at other teams. Again, a lot to sift through. We're still waiting, and it may take this week and maybe beyond before we finally get some answers.
Yeah, and Schefter, that's a great point. One, with the contract completely different from a year ago. Two, I think as jobs happen and open every Sunday and Monday after the regular season, people expect something quickly. That's just not going to be the case with this one. Yeah. And as you would imagine, so many opinions on what the Cowboys should do with this, Christine.
Yes, NFL analyst Herm Edwards and Damian Woody are with us now. Damian, I'm going to start with you. We just heard everything that Schefty had to say about what's going on in Dallas. Do you think that Mike McCarthy should come back as the Cowboys head coach?
I would say no. And the reason I would say no, it's not because I don't think Mike McCarthy is a good coach, but what was the mandate going into the season? Jerry Jones was the one that, let Mike McCarthy, go into a lame duck season without extending his contract, all because he wanted to push his chips push his chips all in on this season. He felt like this team was a team that could compete for a championship. And here we are right now, the Dallas Cowboys, their season was an utter disaster, where the Dallas Cowboys find themselves not even in the postseason. And I know people will say, well, Dak got hurt. They weren't playing well when Dak was in there. So this team fell short of expectations. And I think if you're going to say, we're going to push in all of our chips in and have your head coach as a lame duck head coach, we have to say that Mike McCarthy fell short of expectations.
Oh, he fell short of expectations. I agree with Damian. But here again, I think what's expected when you lose your starting quarterback and the numerous players that this team lost. And I'm not making excuses for Mike. I think he's a really good coach. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of ironic because Micah Parsons, early in the season, had some negative things to say, and all of a sudden his tune changed, being around his head coach and seeing what he's done for this football team and how he motivates these players. So, and in my opinion, Jerry can sit there because at the end of the day, it's Jerry's culture. It belongs to Jerry. It doesn't belong to the head coach. The coach has to fit the culture of what Jerry wants. Yeah. And it doesn't matter who the head coach is. Mike understands the culture. He's won 3 seasons where he won 12 games. Now, he's got to play better in the playoffs, but he didn't have a chance this year. Yeah. I mean, if you're really looking at the football part of it, he didn't really have much of a chance.
Yeah, what were you going to do? No. And you mentioned it, the fact that the coach has to fit the culture. Did you have something to add, Woody?
Yeah, listen, I think Herm brings up a great point about Jerry Jones. This is Jerry Jones' culture. And I think ultimately this is where the Cowboys are, going all the way back to Jimmy Johnson, when the last time that the Cowboys were, champions of the National Football League. Ultimately, what does Jerry Jones want? Because it doesn't matter if it's Mike McCarthy or any other coach. Ultimately, this is Jerry Jones. And I think that the Cowboys won't get to where he wants them to get to unless he has some introspection of himself and how he runs that entire organization. That's the only way the Cowboys can move forward, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And that was the fallout with Jimmy.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
It was Jimmy had the culture going, and it kind of threatened Jerry a little bit, and so ended up being a divorce.
Yeah, and that's been the biggest conversation that we've had. Would a coach fit with Jerry Jones because he is the guy that makes all the decisions? Herman, Damian, thank you. Matt has more with Adam.
Yes, someone who spent time in Dallas. It is Jerry Jones' world, and everybody else is just living in it. We're going to move away from the Dallas Cowboys for just a moment with Adam Schefter. So many job openings, so many potential candidates. We're going to start with Mike Vrabel. What can you tell me about him and some of these other candidates around the league?
Well, there are some obviously candidates who are going to get many interviews and probably wind up with head coaching jobs, and Mike Vrabel would be at or near the top of the list. Obviously, he's interviewed already with the New York Jets. He is going to be a candidate for the Patriots, Saints, and Bears jobs as well. There will be conversations with those teams. Obviously, a lot of people have linked him to New England. There's an obvious connection, but the Patriots are going to go through their process. We'll see ultimately where it winds up. Wouldn't be a surprise if it wound up on Vrabel, but there's still many steps to go before they get there. Meanwhile, there are some teams out there that have some interest in talking with Texas head coach Steve Sarkisian. We'll see whether or not that leads to any interviews and how well that does or doesn't go, but he's coached in the NFL before. Some people think eventually at some point in time he could have interest in returning again, but he has caught the attention of some NFL teams. And look, when you're doing these head coaching searches, you're always thinking for the moon and stars. We've heard about teams wanting to reach out about Kyle Shanahan or Kevin O'Connell and Mike Tomlin. Same kind of thing. There are teams that have pondered, should we call the Steelers to see if there'd be any interest in moving on from him? Steelers are not going to move on from him. Not expected to do that. And Mike Tomlin even has a no-trade clause in his contract. But it hasn't stopped other teams from at least pondering that possibility with as long as Tomlin has been in Pittsburgh. Again, not going to happen, but there are teams that have thought about that in their attempts to go look under every stone to find the best possible coach for their teams.
Yeah, you're going to kick the tires in just about everyone to see if you can bring in that coach that could potentially lead you to a Super Bowl. You brought up Sark. I think it's interesting, college coaches, especially now with how the game has changed. One of those college coaches that seems to be bubbling up at just about every opening in college and pro is Colorado head coach Deion Sanders. What can you tell us about Prime?
Listen, he's been linked to the NFL for a while, but he's been adamant that he wants to be in college. He's recruited top prospects to go play for him. He wants to be there for him, and a lot of people thought that with his son going to the NFL this year, that maybe that would be an opportunity. Again, he's given no indication of that whatsoever. Could there be a time when he does wind up in the NFL? Sure, but I think he believes his mission right now is to help mold young people, and he's committed to some of them. I think he wants to see that through. So, again, that seems to be the thinking right now, as highly as some teams do think of Deion Sanders.
And I think one of the things people in and around the sport are seeing, he's never been a head coach without his son Shador and Travis Hunter playing for him. So it's kind of a new era for Deion in college should he remain at Colorado. I want to pivot now to the Miami Dolphins. They missed the playoffs yesterday. Tyreek Hill, 2 years left on his contract. He's never been one to shy away from giving an opinion. Here's what he had to say following yesterday.
I'm out, bro. You know, so it was great playing here, but you know, at the end of the day, bro, I got to do what's best for, you know, for my career and, you know, what's best. Because I'm too much of a competitor to be, you know, just
Does that mean you're
out there.
Mean you thinking about leaving here?
If it is, hey, yes.
It went even further on social media when he superimposed his head on Antonio Brown's body when Antonio Brown threw the peace sign and left mid-game shirtless. You make of that what you will, Adam. What is the latest on Tyreek Hill? You heard the sound. You saw the social media post.
Well, there's going to be a question as to his future in Miami, and he's created that with the comments that he made yesterday, talking about the fact that maybe it is time to move on from Miami. Obviously, there were some issues during the game where he didn't play. Mike McDaniel said that he thought Tyreek Hill might have been hurt. Maybe he was, maybe he wasn't. Tyreek Hill says what he does. The season started with Tyreek Hill and a controversy surrounding him. It's ending with a different type of controversy surrounding him. And now the question will be whether these two sides figure out something to keep alive their relationship or whether or not the Dolphins are willing to move off of Tyreek Hill and trade him at some point in time. Last offseason, he wanted to get paid. They gave him a new contract. Now it sounds like he wants to be gone. We'll see if they acquiesce to his wishes here. But clearly there are going to be questions that both sides have to answer moving forward.
Yeah, team ownership this morning said they're keeping the head coach, they're keeping the GM. That will be the stability the Dolphins will do. We'll see what happens with their star receiver coming up this offseason.
My friend, the playoff picture is set,
Hi.
but there are many questions about the future for players and coaches whose seasons have ended. What is the next move for Jerry Jones and the Cowboys? Adam Schefter is here in moments to discuss Mike McCarthy's future and what Micah Parsons had to say this morning about the head coach. Is it Rodgers and out for Aaron Rodgers and the Jets? What is the team thinking? Does the four-time MVP even want to play next season? We'll dig into those questions. And after saying, "I'm out, bro," following yesterday's season-ending game against the Jets, what does the future hold for Dolphins wide receiver Tyreek Hill? So, as I mentioned at the top, the NFL playoff picture, it's set, including the wild card weekend schedule. Chargers, Texans, and Steelers, Ravens get it going on Saturday. Broncos, Bills, Packers, Eagles, and Commanders, Bucks highlight a Sunday triple header. And then Vikings, Rams caps it off in Monday night on ABC and ESPN. First impressions on all the matchups later this hour, but some coaching questions have already been answered, Matt.
Yeah, the playoffs, the good news, the bad news, the Monday after the regular season is always unpleasant. Coaches loses their job. It started Sunday. Gerard Mayo out after one season. The hand-picked successor to Bill Belichick. Mayo went 4-13 this year. Then today, the Jags also fired Doug Peterson after going 4-13 this season. Peterson led Jacksonville to a playoff win in his first season, but the Jags lost 18 of their last 23 dating back to last year. And maybe the biggest surprise of the day, the Giants not making a move. The team is going to retain their head coach Brian Daboll and their GM Joe Schoen. New York went 3-14 this year after letting Saquon Barkley walk publicly on Hard Knocks and waiving quarterback Daniel Jones. So here's the list of the vacancies: Jags, Patriots, Bears, Saints, and Jets. Right now, that is 5. One you don't see on there, the Dallas Cowboys. Here's what Micah Parsons